Founder of Horror Escapes LA, Rachel Foti. Founder of Inside the Magic and producer at Pseudonym Productions, Ricky Brigante. Haunted attraction designer and consultant, Ted Dougherty. And your hosts from My Haunt Life podcast, Mike Fontaine and Russell Eaton. Ladies and gentlemen, the Immersive Horror Box presentation. Please be seated.
I thought you were going to start this.
Hello, and welcome to the last panel in this room of the day. I'm Mike.
And I'm Russell.
Oh, that was just a really stupid joke. If you listen to the podcast, you definitely don't need to clap for that. But thank you. So yeah, this is the last panel of the day in this room. Save the best for last. I mean, look at who's on the stage. This is incredible, and I'm not worthy, honestly. There's so much talent up here that I have none of.
So if you're here, you're probably interested in the immersive scene, which has been repeatedly said this weekend on various panels. It's kind of booming in the Los Angeles area. And I wrote it down because I couldn't remember it all weekend. The title of this panel is Immersive Horror, New Trends Outside the Box. And I think if you look at the people on this panel, the combination, the common denominator of this is each of these people is creating something, and what they're doing is not straightforward. It is not linear. It is not what you've seen before. And that seems to be something that the immersive community in Los Angeles is gravitating toward, is what's new, what's different. And there is always going to be the interest in haunts. There's always going to be now the interest in escape rooms. There's always going to be the interest in immersive theater now that it's something that more people are understanding and going to. So let's just start going down the line in what are you creating? And Ted obviously has the t-shirt from Murder Co. on. Out of curiosity, who has been to Murder Co., the escape rooms?
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have some, how would you describe for yourself, how would you describe Murder Co.? It is an escape room, but it is more than that.
Yeah, it's a theatrically driven escape experience. I mean, it's billed as the first R-rated horror escape experience. So the idea is to really kind of create more of a substantive type of adventure through more compelling storytelling and leading these folks through this crazed, violent, gore-filled universe and try to escape out of it.
So, which one of the things that I think sets apart Murder Co. as an escape room is you do not shy from dark material, gore, and it is violent, not necessarily aggressive toward the patron, I don't want to say, even though you will find yourself in horrific situations and you will physically be reacting to those. How did that mix of genres come about?
Well, it was the brainchild of John Cook, who was a designer from originally from Knott's, and now is the new creative director for Queen Mary's Dark Harbor. And the idea behind it, was based on his experience in the theme park industry, based on my experience in the theme park industry. It was like, okay, what would we do if we didn't have those types of parameters that we kind of have to deal with on a constant basis in that world? And so the idea was, okay, let's kind of open things up a lot more, and John had some of these sort of basic ideas about what Murder Co. should be in terms of pushing the envelope with respect to the gore and sort of the violence and stuff like that, but we wanted it still to have a sense of kind of professional sort of elegance that we were trying to achieve, even though the content is really kind of dim and dingy, but we had a sense of professionalism that we wanted to bring that we were learning from the themed entertainment industry. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and where are you located, by the way?
Upland, California.
Yeah, because you're not in Los Angeles.
Right.
It's worth the drive, people, if you like escape rooms and you like horror. We have several creators here. I'm just going to continue down the line. This is not the only city where this is happening. And I'm someone who travels every now and then, and I have been to immersive interactive experiences in other states and other cities. And Ricky, you are the founder of Inside the Magic, which I have a feeling probably many people in this room are familiar with. But you started a company called Pseudonym Productions. And you are dabbling in immersive theater, but you're doing more than that. And what are you mixing and what are you bringing to the table in the Orlando area? And what's the genesis of your projects?
Yeah, definitely. First, I just want to say the pseudonym is actually founded by Sarah Elger right there in the front row. I joined her company about 3 years ago while still doing Inside the Magic because I was so intrigued by the blending of different things. It's incorporating elements of immersive theater, a bit of haunted house elements, a bit of escape room sort of fun, but also introducing a lot of art and architecture and sort of the gaming elements of video gaming, bringing that to life, and incorporating all of that into what amounts to usually an hour, hour and a half, 2-hour experience that brings people together to explore and engage and, like immersive theater, interact with actors, but also sort of be driven on their own and have their own personal journey where they feel like they're sort of the center of the experience. So whether we're telling a story of something that is in the horror genre, which we've done a couple of times, out of the 4 big productions we've done over the last 3 years, or it could be just mystery, thriller, intrigue, all of that. We really want people to walk away feeling like they matter in the conversation, that they're not just a passive observer, and that they're really taking part in this adventure and come away feeling even feeling a bit better about themselves, perhaps, despite some horrific things they might find along the way.
Right. You look like you were about to ask something.
No, I'm not a creator.
No, Rachel?
Hi guys.
You're also working on something that's fairly unique in the Los Angeles area. Rachel, you have a history in escape rooms, and you have a history of putting performers in escape rooms. Tell us about the Count's Den, and because that is an immersive experience, but would you call it immersive theater? It sounds like more than that.
It's definitely immersive theater, but what it is it's an actual location in downtown Los Angeles, a solid location where we have characters in that location and that you can interact with on a continuous storyline. So it's vampire themed, so you would meet the Countess Cora and her family within that den. And it's a space where the story continues for, I'm hoping, years. Where the actors can actually grow and develop within their character, and they're dedicated. They're dedicated there for at least a couple of years, and so it's private membership and invite only. We have a whole back-end ARG and forum that the participants can actually interact with the characters of the space, but it is a set location and space that you can go to and hang out. Actually, some of our inner circle members, we now provide lockers where they can store their own personal stuff. So it's really just a personalized experience within immersive theater, where we really get to know the members and the participants that want to engage with us and want to play in a space that's a solid location.
And then do those characters lead to specific, because you're describing a location in a lounge atmosphere, they lead to specific shows?
They do. Right now, well, we're constantly creating shows, and for instance, on Thursday nights is the Inner Circle member night, where we always have game nights or movie night, and you can hang out, and when you're there, you're interacting with the characters there and gaining further storylines and plots for future stories, which then leads to ticketed events for the characters, or just put in the storyline. So right now we're working on an origin series for all our main characters of vampires, and whether you have been a member and actually know the background of those characters or not, if you're just coming in, we'll debrief you on it. It's an episode of how they turn from their mortal life into a vampire. So it's all really kind of tragic. I mean, it is death. We're talking about death here and horror, but how we're doing these shows is in a way where we're hoping to gain an emotional response to our members, to the participants going to these shows, and each character has a very different history from one another. So you can kind of pick and choose your character that you want to kind of vibe with and be more involved with or talk on the forum with. Yeah.
And last on the panel is Justin Fix. Justin Fix, I'm sorry, what's the name of your production? Justin Fix Productions.
Yeah, it's really clever.
For those of you who are familiar with the haunt scene in Los Angeles, a couple of years ago, Creep LA burst onto the scene, doing something very unique, and that partially is created from this man, and also well known as The Willows, which is a approximately 2 hours immersive experience, immersive theater with definite horror and some haunt overtones, depending on what track you have, and there are multiple tracks that can be taken during the show. So you've dabbled in a lot of different genres.
Yeah, so I grew up as like a haunt lover. So naturally, like the Halloween space was something that I really wanted to get into. So in 2015, like a group of 12 of my friends got together and we produced sort of this hybrid haunted house. I always say Creep is like a 360-degree multi-sensory experience that guests are pulled through various rooms and environments and pulled into frightening scenes and encounters. And that's kind of what it was, right? It was like taking the format of a traditional kind of pulse-through experience and allowing ourselves to take our time and to breathe in those spaces that we normally get a jump scare from the back and push out. But what if we could allow some times for people to kind of enter these spaces and, you know, let's either give them some sort of story or ghost story or monologue or some sort of interaction or fright or participatory game like playing Bloody Mary or playing dead, you know, those kind of things. And so that's kind of how it started. And our first year was like a 30-minute experience. And in 2016 we came back and it was like an hour experience. And from that, we knew that we just loved the world so much, but we knew that until like Midsummer Screams, there wasn't really an audience just to like do Halloween events and activities across Los Angeles, which we normally would. So we are just like a group of creepy team, and we wrote a show called The Willows, which was an adaptation of like a modern murder mystery, kind of flipped on its head. It's like Clue meets the Addams Family. It's this like really wacky family, and you show up to the family to celebrate their son Jonathan, who you're actually there and you celebrate the passing of their friend son Jonathan, and it kind of takes you across a sprawling house and into some, you know, really dark narratives and stories with them. So yeah, and for us, it's always about, and for all of us, right, we're talking about how we're trying to continue to reinvent, and I think this is such like a new format or a new wave, and I think, you know, there's really no truth to the mechanics of it. There's some things that we're piecing from every facets that we either love or we don't love, and kind of making it into these worlds that work for ourselves. But, you know, all of us on this stage operate completely different formats and throughputs, and yet we're still telling these wonderful stories that people get to kind of immerse themselves in these worlds. And I think that's the coolest thing.
Whenever something new happens, and this is why we're having this panel, because this is all new, when you combine things, there's always a learning process for the patrons. How do you make sure the patrons understand what exactly is going to happen, and what will it take to get past the diehard fans that will always show up to everything to the more casual people?
I'll just jump on that really quick, because mine's really quick. For us, I think this world is so new that we have to apply the traditional haunted house rules out front. Like, you know, like you're going to be touched, there's going to be strobe lights and fog, like you're going to be pushed through, dark spaces or whatever. I think we have to continue. I wish there was a cooler way of doing it so you could naturally sort of immerse yourself into this world, but I don't think we're there yet. And I think, much like people are fans of like Ricky's work, when they come to our work, some people just behave how they would in Ricky's show, but not in my show, and you're like, but that doesn't work in this show. So I think it's really something that we all as creators need to focus on, which I refer to as like the portal, which is the space where people really start to understand the world in which they know they are going to be in, so they respect the space, and yet the story can be moved forward without like hiccups. So I think it's such a huge thing.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, yeah, it's very true, because we get people who come, especially in Orlando, where this scene does not exist. We get everyone who either thinks it's going to be something akin to a theme park attraction, which we're definitely not, or is this an escape room? And we're definitely not that. There's anything wrong with that, but we're just not that, right? And so the behavior that comes with an escape room is not what we want out of people. We want a very different type. So we take people down an initial path, a journey to get them into that mindset. We devote a good 10, 15, 20 minutes at the beginning of easing sort of that transition from I'm coming to do a fun thing to, oh, I'm actually part of this world and I have a purpose here and I have a role, and then where does the story go from there? So it's definitely a challenge to educate people for something that's completely different.
And for me, the escape rooms are one thing, and then the immersive theater lounge is another thing. And for the escape rooms, it's just straight up like warnings of this is what you're getting involved in, this is what's going to happen. If you have a problem with any of this, speak now. And we break it all down for them with confirmation emails prior, and we just try to be as informative as possible. As for the Count's Den and this lounge, because it is a membership and a private invite lounge, and we kind of pride ourselves of being very personal with our participants. We have different types of events. So we have our nights that are really just inner circle. We know everyone. They all know the characters. We know what to expect from them. I'm actually building a back-end CRM system for all our members, so we know what their intensity levels are. We know what they're comfortable with. We know their allergies. We know any kind of triggers that they would have or want or not want, so we can actually fully customize the shows for them, which is why I think this lounge is good in that sense, because we actually have an opportunity where they keep coming back and we get to build a relationship with these participants. As for people that haven't been there and they're new to the space, and because immersive theater, like Justin said, it is such a new thing, people don't really know how to act or respond if a character's coming up to you and acting a certain way. How can I trust that this new person coming in that's never really been in an immersive environment, that they're going to behave correctly and that my actors are safe and that they're not going to be put out or heckled or touched, whatever it is, just inappropriately. And how I'm managing that is we have events that are just for, so we have larger ticketed events that the inner circle members that we have, they go to them also, but it's also invite. So we have new people in. So the actors know we're behaving in a different way with people that we do not know. And I make sure that we have a safe word throughout all our staff and all our actors, that if someone's being inappropriate or maybe not know how to behave in this world, we let each other know with our own safe word, our inward safe word of like, hey, this guy, submarine. Keep your eyes on this one, and we take care of each other as a family in this space, in a sense. We make sure that all the actors are aware, and then it's an opportunity to actually play with that participant that doesn't really know how to act, of like, hey, no, like, you can still kind of keep in character in a sense of telling the boundaries here. So that's what we do.
And for us, it started with certainly with the marketing. Us having the word escape in there, we're certainly going to get the escape enthusiasts that show up. but we're very clear as they're checking in and explaining what this is. And so the immersive theater or the immersive experience folks that come and visit us get it immediately. But the escape enthusiasts, we do need to we spend a little bit of time with sort of letting them know what this is and giving them an opportunity like, hey, this is a very heavy experience, and kind of vaguely outline what to expect. So that way, if they have to feel like they need to tap out, they can. But for the most part, it's surprisingly, the escape enthusiasts have really kind of embraced it and sort of kind of taken it as like a challenge to say, okay, let's try and battle through this type of unique experience. So, yeah.
And Justin, you said something to Ricky that someone going to his show might not act the same way as in your show. And then you, Ricky, you had mentioned that there's nothing like this in Florida, really. Would you, at that point, do you think people are products of their environment? So, for example, would someone from Florida come here and, you know, depending on who they, like what they're into, not get it and have to be explained everything? Or do you think that because we're in such a rich environment right now, we all get it just because there's so much of it and there's so much more teaching and learning going on?
It's definitely an interesting thing for it to be a little bit out of the bubble here. I would say there's, you know, we've done, out of our 4 productions, we've done one that was a little bit more geared to be traditional. It's called Catharsis, and it was a walk through, you know, in small groups and a scene. And surprisingly, you know, by putting it in that sort of expected format, people, but doing unexpected things with it, that created a bit of a confusing experience because people expected the traditional haunted house. But by having somebody come in and it's just completely different from the beginning, and very carefully crafting those initial opening scenes to allow people to open their minds and be ready for, you know, sort of the more unexpected things that were to come, it's allowed them to be open and play more. So, I mean, to answer your question, I think a significant portion of the people who are normally familiar with theme parks, if they were to come out here and just be shoved into the immersive horror scene, they'd just be like, whoa, I'm done, I'm out. But there's also a lot of people who've, I'm sure, read about it, you know, online. It's like, I'm curious.
Talking about, Mike brought up the idea of like going forward, and your audience is going to shift, your audience is going to change. And Ted, maybe you and Ricky might be dealing with this a little more at the forefront, because these guys are talking, I think, more, I hate the word traditional, but closer to like a normal theatrical experience. And you're like, oh, this is a performance. Oh, this is, even though I'm being interacted with, it's that. You guys are talking about experiences where, you know, Mike made a comment about extending this in longevity, and you're going to have to bring in larger audiences, and you guys also, I know, have to face this, you know, and partially, the ticket prices for these events are quite often steeper than traditional haunted house, which there's a blessing and curse to that. The blessing being you immediately weed out a certain level of, God, this sounds so judgmental. but your people, if they're willing to plunk down that amount for a higher ticket price, they're also willing to invest. So going forward, the escape room, and Ricky, you flat out said you want to affect people, you want to have an emotional effect on them. Like, is it through marketing? Is it through word of mouth? Like, where do you guys see this transitioning? And the reason I'm trying to ask this very befuddling question, I'm befuddled. Like, in the future, it's like you guys you're on the cutting edge now. It's like, what's coming down for you guys? What are you looking forward to? And you already addressed this a little bit, Rachel, of what's coming forward. Like, what's the future? Because it is going to have to, as Mike said, talk to more people.
Well, I think you kind of did mention it. I think one important aspect would be marketing, and really kind of using that as sort of a launching pad on how to educate potential future guests, and really getting a larger word out there. And I think the more that these types of things exist, and the more that experiences sort of expand and push the envelopes and gain more people, and the more we have Midsummer streams out there and all that stuff, that's a way to kind of get the word out. I mean, I heard about Creep when it first came out because of something I think like Rick West put out, and so I mean it was part of this community, and so I think that's one way to really kind of get out there, and then at least for some of the more mid-range, smaller types of experiences, I think it's going to still kind of depend a lot on word of mouth too.
With all this, I know Justin and I have talked about this, to put on something that everybody wants, that individual, that personal experience or the customization, and have a whole host of actors in a giant space and all these sets and all of this, but yet you want the one person to enjoy their one experience. You can't keep that going forever. There's a misbalance there. So that's literally what we are working on right now. That's why I sold Inside the Magic recently, so we can focus full time on creating a model that allows for a sustainability and understandability behind this sort of new and upcoming world of immersive, whatever you want to call it, immersive horror, immersive theater, immersive whatever. It is definitely a significant challenge that I'm not even sure anyone, even with a ton of shows out here in LA, have figured out how to make it keep going.
And you have multiple tracks in your show? You mentioned the one show that wasn't, but...
Right. We did, the biggest show that we did was called One Shadows Fall, and it wasn't exactly horror, it had some horror elements to it, but it had up to 40 people participating simultaneously for an hour and a half to 2 hours, with 14 different roles that they could pick from at the beginning, with a few people in each, and it was almost like 14 different stories being told of this, perspectives of the same overarching story, and so everyone had their own little role, and so that's still only 40 people. It's like, what if we needed 400 or 4,000 people to do it? It's a tough scaling problem.
Well, you have, I think the biggest issue is like we're operating like Disneyland, but with human beings. You're going through the Pirates of the Caribbean, but they're not like puppets on a record block. You're like having emotional connections with complete strangers or amazing actors that are like, you have those WTF moments that you're like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, what am I doing right now with this complete stranger? And I'm having an absolute blast. And for those moments as adults where we can check out and we can have that moment of play, like, it does something. And if all y'all are in the space, you've either done something, you're interested in the space. Once you do it, it's like, you crave it. It's like going to proscenium theater. Shows are boring to me, and I'm like a musical theater dude, but like, because I'm not up on the stage being like, yes, we're gonna kick with the cast, I'm not enjoying it. Like when I saw Carrie the musical, like downtown, I was like, yes, put me on the stage, like let the blood get poured all over me, and it was a cool way to see theater. And I've been trying to trick people to go see theater, but there comes a little wear and tear, right? Because yes, I feel like in the last couple years, we as creators before had been spending a lot of money out of our own pockets to allow people to have these unbelievable adventures. And kind of looking back at ourselves and being like, what is the cost of an experience? What are people willing to pay? If people are willing to pay this to do VR or on expensive trips, whatever it may be, what are willing people to pay here? And I think we are starting to not say like rule out a price bracket that doesn't work, but a price bracket that is practical for it to work for us. Because to be honest, like it's not, probably most of us, we love dough, but I will probably tell you most of us, that's secondary, probably. And unfortunately, that's not a really good business mind. But creatively, what we all have to do over these next couple of years is continue to champion the word, to grow it. Because we haven't even scratched, like when we say we think we've gotten 5,000 people through our lines, that's like nothing what like a normal haunt does, like 12,000 people through a season. So like we're not even, here we're building these like haunt worlds that like are getting a throughput of the fourth of the fraction.
As for sustainability, I think with the count stem specifically, I feel like it's a much different model because we are customizing and making it very personal. And I know for me, if I'm going to continue to spend my time with a show or continue to go back, I love the Willows. Like, I loved it so much. And what I loved about it is that I could come back and I could go a different path. And I really enjoyed that. And I could see the characters again. And maybe they're going to act differently this time or whatever. Like, I myself can kind of choose what I want to get out of that experience. And so for sustainability, with the escape room industry, I have multiple of rooms. Once the participants do all the rooms, they're done. And that's it. And because of that, why I kind of went more into immersive theater is I want to have an effect on someone's life. And with that, I think people want their life affected. I think people want an emotional connection. They want something to come back to. They want something to see the world around them grow, or vice versa, see something in them grow because a character affected them a certain way, or maybe the next day a conversation goes a different way. Whereas, so the Count's Den, you're actually able to communicate with our characters on a back-end forum, on a Slack app, where, if you have something with our character Jermaine and he's acting weird one day, you follow up with him in 2 days and be like, dude, what's going on? And he'll respond to you and say what's going on. And he's like, you know what, when you come back to the den on Thursday night at game night, I need you to bring me a bottle of absinthe. And so this actually did happen. And so the participant comes and brings a bottle of absinthe, and then they have that exchange, and the participant had to hide it inside of the den, and then he had to find it. And so for sustainability, because of my experience with the escape rooms and realizing it is kind of one and done once they do the rooms, unless you're switching it up or switching it. When it comes to immersive theater, what I'm trying to do is create an experience that I would want, meaning I like the attention on me. So with that being said, I think the participants interacting with these actors and characters, they want the attention on them. They want to know that they're being heard and can go back to those characters and then see them again on Thursday night. So my model for sustainability is creating something as personalized and customized as possible, which is very difficult to do. There's a lot of people that have a lot of ideas of what they like, what they don't like, and you can't please everyone, and a lot of, specifically, I'll just go back to escape rooms, I can't please everyone because it's structured in a way where they go through and the experience is the same for the next person to the next person to the next person. So I can't, whatever you might like, it might not be the same that you might like. So I cannot guarantee that everyone's going to have an enjoyable experience. Whereas in immersive theater, on the other side, if we want to go more of that, we can kind of find out about you and see what you like, see how you respond to these actors, see what you enjoy about them, what you don't enjoy about them. And I think that's my model for sustainability, is how can I keep a continuous attraction from an audience that it feels so personalized that they want to keep coming back for more.
And I think also something you just touched on, and it happens with the Willows because there are multiple tracks in the Willows show, and so if you go back a second time, you're aware that a patron is returning, and so they will get different interactions with different characters. At MurderCo, you have, I don't want to be too spoiler because it's an escape room, but you do have to make certain choices that will affect who you interact with. And that is a kind of a riff on what Rachel was just talking about. And Ricky, I don't know with your show if you've quite encountered that, but I think what you were just discussing about the immersive community as patrons, that seems to be as Mike and I have been doing our podcast, that's quite often feedback we hear is they are looking for an individualized experience, but they also want a good show. It's like, it's not just the individualization, and I think like everyone here is, with the mixing of genres, is tackling that subject. because immersive theater in itself is like the one-on-ones and all of that. Yes, they're wonderful when you get them, but not every audience is going to get that. Not every patron is going to get that. So that's why I was going into the sustainability and like the shifting of genres.
This is kind of like a sister-in-law, cousin type of question to go along with yours to sustainability, but we're in an evolution, you know, like if you like, it's kind of like an I want more evolution. You know, there were haunts, I want more, so then there's extreme haunts came. Theater, I want more, then immersive theater came. Rachel, you went to immersive theater and like, I want more, and now we're doing this crazy like customizable thing for pretty much anyone that can get to it. You guys are forcing an evolution. With that being said, what comes next?
Wow.
Westworld.
Well, I mean, I think I love what Rachel was saying about, you know, the idea of really kind of being able to interact with these characters in these worlds. And I think expanding that is a really good start, because that has no limit. You know, I mean, we can do whatever we could turn this boring conference room into something incredible with the right interaction with people. And so I think that is probably where I would go as far as looking at the heart of what all of this is. Yes, it is a business. Yes, we're looking at ways to sort of grow and expand that, but it's about making memorable experiences so people want to return and visit us, and a tradition being born. And so I think one way to do that is to really kind of look at sort of the actor side of things, simply because otherwise we can build incredible sets, and we can have some cool monsters or whatever popping out, but when we can really look deep into their eyes and make that connection and to try to create something that's going to last for a while, I think that's kind of the angle I would sort of start with.
Perspective shift going on with entertainment here. It's, you know, with the, you know, we're on a stage here and this is very standard. All the examples you just gave of sort of the traditional ways of doing it, it was always audience and show, and now we're involving the audience in the show. But the future of it is, what if the audience is the show? The audience, like you were saying, want to feel, you know, it's not necessarily attention on them, but it's feeling special, feeling that emotional connection. And it's a way of making it so that the show itself almost takes the backstage to what the audience, the participant is experiencing, that they are the center of everything. They are the one who's feeling like, oh, I'm in control, I'm, you know, in charge of this.
And can affect the story itself.
Exactly, and it feels like it is bending around, just like real life does, but like a cooler version of real life. I mean, that's kind of what, you know, you said Westworld, but even taking beyond that, it's like, it's I have everyone here, and you know, I'm the most important person in the room, and so are you, and so are you, you know, to yourself, and that's where this is going, I think.
And I just will say, there's, you know, like Renaissance fairs, like Renaissance fairs to me are like the best type of immersive theater, and I'm like, oh my God, cool, like put me on this, like, and let me like roll for like 11 acres and just like stroll and just like check it out. And come across people and, you know, share beer with people and learn how to sew, and like that's, to me, that's immersive theater. And there is a company, I'll tell you, there's a company in Utah called Evermore, and it's going to be huge. It will be where, when this gets commercialized and when people realize that, the theme parks realize that you don't need to invest millions and billions in rides, you need to invest that in people, and then those people can create the experiences for people in the world. And there is a place called Evermore in Utah that's going to open up this September, and you are going to be able to like be loaded into this world and feel transported, and be able to enjoy the seasons, and inside that, and get to enjoy like Shakespearean theater, or get to enjoy, you know, these like bars and taverns, and be able to free roam, and it's like one big immersive theatrical production. And that is like what we are doing, right? But like, instead of feeling like we need to pulse people through a space and then out, they are what like a mouse is doing. They're dropping them in and then have them spend the day. in this sort of environmental space.
What?
Do you want to follow up with anything, or do you want to open it up?
Oh, if we're opening up for questions, I have a question.
Sure.
This is a very important question. Are you guys Team Snickers or Team Kit Kat?
Team Snickers or Team Kit Kat? This is how we judge the quality of your soul.
It depends on my mood. Most recently, Snickers.
Okay.
Kit Kat, definitely.
Okay.
Really depends on my mood and like what I'm pairing it with, like milk. Right now I'm feeling Team Snickers.
I like the Halloween candy Snickers, but I like the king-size bar of the Kit Kat.
Okay. There's room in this world for everything. Welcome to the immersive experience.
Look for clues on Twitter later.
Okay. Obviously, we have a lot of immersive fans. We have a lot of fans of these creators in the room. If you have a question, please raise your hand. And please speak loudly so everyone can hear it. And if anyone doesn't hear the question and want us to repeat it, just yell, "Repeat the question!" So, anyone? Questions? Yes.
What are your guys' favorite themes or storylines to focus on for your immersive experiences?
Well, for me, my roots are, I'm just a Halloween dude, so I love like fantasy werewolves and monsters, like that kind of thing. For a lot of the more recent things I've worked on are kind of deal with more like real life types of horrific monsters, but ideally, if I can mess with vampires and werewolves and things like that, that's my favorite.
We've made a pattern of going through sort of historical texts that were interesting in some way, and then pulling from that, sort of being inspired by it. So we've used like Plato's Republic, we've used Greek mythology, we've used, I found this really obscure Freud sort of contemporary named Frederick van Eaton, who wrote a study of dreams, this bizarre, in-depth analysis of what dreams could be, and we did an entire Halloween experience centered around entering a dream world. So there's a lot of really great things if you just sort of hunt around into the history of anything.
For me, I love magic, anything magical, or where counts then is vampire, but to go deeper than that, for ideas of shows or how to interact with people, I mean, the idea, like, for instance, suggestibility and how people interact because something is suggested. I almost want to put that in a show to kind of see how people react to it, or even just emotional tragedy. Different types of tragedy that we all deal with on a personal level, or have a background or history, whether it be domestic stuff or sexual stuff or whatever it is that as a collective in this world have. That inspires me. It inspires me to try to bring that out of people and kind of overcome and actually touch people in a good way so they leave happy. So on top of the magic and the vampires and all of that, in our characters, they do all have a background history that hopefully someone in the audience can relate to and want to explore that with. So.
And I just really think we always focused on, it sounds so cheesy, but like stories that reach out and grab you. And to me, it's just to transport people. And at the end of the day, after you allow people to journey and travel and take in and soak in and reflect, naturally what that does is it allows people to have conversations and allows people to engage. And at the end of the day, with the Willows, as a primary example, we as a team sat around a table and said, wouldn't it be crazy to just get a bunch of LA people together, sit them around a table and eat soup and see how they handle it? And sure enough, you had a bunch of strangers sitting around and dealing with this really bizarre family and really learning some family lessons and also finding times to look people in the eye and find jokes and similarities between each other. And I think to me, like, we have always been trying to just build a compound of like community and people who, you know, just to like, you know, stop sliding left and right and like look up and just like take this in somehow. And I know everyone's like, put the screen down, but like put the screen down, because when you do it and you allow yourself just to take in strangers, it can allow for some wonderful, you know, spark of interest.
Soup and a lovely cheese plate, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Something that each of you touched on in a slightly different manner. You know, I think part of the reason that there's so much interest in this type of work right now is the emotional impact that it can have. And if you feel awkward, if you feel scared, if you are challenged, if you do make an emotional connection, which is what all of these different experiences seem to be, like that's what's drawing people to them. It's like, and I'll be the first to admit it, I've had a transformative experience inside an immersive show. You know, where I literally just let go and somebody challenged me, like, examine this. And I think those moments, and I think probably as creators, each of you have seen something like that. It's like, I think that's what draws these people here. I think that's what draws the community, and LA is a big city, and there is a rabid community right now who's absorbing all of this work. But I think it comes down to the emotional impact. And even if it's, for lack of a better word, shallow, even if it's minor, it's still there. It doesn't have to be transformative if it's just a connection. If it's just literally comforting someone over a bowl of soup. You know, and it's like, yeah, you know, it's scaring someone through a sheet of glass. Or challenging someone to think about a game and how they can affect the outcome of what you find in the scene. So, sorry, just digressing for a moment. Yeah, it does answer your question.
Yeah, are there any emerging technologies you guys are excited about entering the space that you may incorporate into respective experiences?
The question, in case anybody is, are there emerging technologies that are exciting these guys that they might be able to incorporate into this type of creation and experiences?
We're definitely tech-focused moving forward, and personally, the potential of augmented reality, I think, is what is most interesting to me as a tech person. I'm not the biggest fan of virtual reality, to be honest, because it does block you from the rest of the world. It can be the most amazing VR experience ever, but you're never in the real world. And that's what we do. We're all about something that feels grounded and real. And I think as far as tech goes, AR has tremendous potential to add another layer of fantasy that you can't produce in the real world. You know, do some magical elements that are, you know, sure, they're smoke and mirrors, but in another few years, once it gets, you know, if I had contact lenses that did AR or something like that, that would be incredible.
For the sake of this panel and the community, it's like, define how you are interpreting augmented reality.
Sure. It would be, to me, it would be if my chair was empty and you all had some sort of tech, something, you know, embedded in your head or something, and you could see me sitting here even though I'm not really here. So it's a layer of fiction, a layer of fakeness on top of reality that feels real, without blurring the rest of the world.
Yes.
A general question for all of you, what's next? Specifically, are you opening up more rooms? Are you going to do anything in California? Are you opening up more rooms or having more shows with Countstand? Is the Willows coming back? I mean, Willows and Creek Ballet, are they coming back?
Well, with respect to Murder Co., we're going to be expanding it in terms of our actors and the characters that are inside of the experience through time, and with that, the experience will be altered as well. So it won't be the same thing that people have already gone through. And eventually, yes, there'll be more rooms down
California, maybe. Yeah, we're not necessarily set in Orlando specifically forever, but what is in store for us, Citadel Productions, is, we like to say we question reality. And so that sort of is a broad statement on purpose, because we want to take whatever reality whether it's coming to an experience, whether it's sitting at home on your computer, whether it's being on your phone, whether it's being here in this room right now, and we want to add another layer of interestingness to that, of mystery, of intrigue. And so we're currently, just very recently, we've really sort of put the work down, and we're working full-time on developing all the variations of what that could mean moving forward, not just a series of pop-up productions, a more complete company to move that forward.
What's next? I'm opening up another escape room next week for the escape room stuff. And then as for the Counston, we're building out our event calendar. It's kind of a beast of a calendar. Every week we always have game nights and member nights for the Inner Circle on Thursday nights. With that, we're doing canvas painting nights where you can go and you can paint a vampire. We are going to have craft nights if you want to come and do crafts, taxidermy nights, movie nights. We're going to have something going on every night of the week there. It's still new. I mean, we've only been open for 2 months, and in that time, we've already recreated a vampire origin series for all our main characters. So you get the back-end story of a ticketed immersive experience of what happened in their mortal life that turned them into a vampire. So we're currently writing a show right now for each one of our characters. We just released one that's one and done, and for Jermaine. And then after that one, if you bought a ticket to that event, you get a special solo event, like a sequel, to get more in depth of that character, where you have a one-on-one experience with them. And that will be the same for all our characters. So right now we're writing an episode for Elizabeth, the very sexy vampire, and in her origin story in the 1800s, and for each one of our characters. So every month, I'm hoping, throughout 2018, every month we're having one of those larger immersive shows, and then sequels every 2 weeks after that, and then just have a full-on calendar of events every week.
Yeah, so we were here today, for those of you who saw us walking around with things on our heads. So you were speaking to, he left, good. Well, he was speaking to a question about technology. But what's really cool is, too, in this format and this type of storyboarding and gamifying stories, we kind of made Willows and adapted Willows into a VR experience. So much like what the Willows was a 2-hour experience, now you can actually put on a headset through Oculus Go and download it, and it's kind of like choose your own adventure, so it's actually interactive. So you're not just a fly on the wall, you actually get to pick and choose, do you want to go upstairs with Deirdre, or do you want to go get drunk with Claudia in the basement, And so you're so you get to, it's kind of gamifying, you get to kind of see the world and get to see all these different stories, so I think that's really cool. And because we're not bringing back the Willows this fall, we'd love to, but we are bringing back Creep. So, it's, you guys, the scariest thing in Los Angeles is trying to find a space. So, hopefully everything's moving well, but, we got a space as of Tuesday, and we casted this thing as of yesterday. So, we're happening, but, we'll see, yeah.
Show the flyer.
Oh, so this is for the Will. So if you want one, if you want to keep up when we release tickets for Creep, come up here and you can just grab a stack of these, and that's where you'll see everything gets released and posted and that kind of stuff. And we'll be in downtown LA this year. It's for somebody.
Any more questions from people? Anyone? There's a bright light right there, so I can't quite see. Yes?
So I've been able to go to Creep LA and the Willows and Horror Escapes. I'm just curious, either for those shows or for all of you, were there movies, TV shows, books, games that inspired you for those specific stories that you're telling right now?
Yeah, what do they say? Art just rips, imitates art, or we're like a sponge. I think we're influenced every day by really great, great classic Halloween movies and great comic books and podcasts. Yeah, we do really kind of pull from every kind of
Yeah, I just like playing pretend. I enjoy that. I enjoy, I think it's also easier, I know I keep like bouncing on the emotional stuff, but I think it's easier to kind of relate with people in a pretend world. So I think that's always like kind of like watching TV or movies and seeing a character really come raw with their emotions. And because it's on TV or in a movie, it's like I almost have this space where it's not real life, but I can get into that character and fall in love with that character. So definitely I've been affected by the media surrounding me and being artistic, trying to create almost something very similar.
Again, sort of the question earlier about the historical texts that I said, there's such a rich history of art that it's easy to be swayed for like current things, that are on TV or in the box office or whatever. But we've drawn from, we go back to like Fritz Lang's Metropolis for inspiration. Like Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which is an amazing movie. Pulling just elements of that and mashing them together to create your own thing.
Yeah, I love working on attractions that are based off of researching a lot of history. Love that kind of thing. But Murder Co. is certainly a response. It's a current type of experience that was inspired by media, inspired by really bad, horrific murder stories and serial killers. So, I mean, that was kind of the literal guts, I guess, of sorry, for our experience.
I find it interesting that if you've been paying attention, I think at least 3 of you have used the word play. And I think that's partially the immersive community. I think immersive experiences, I think that's what it is. It is an invitation to the audience that has been expected to just absorb. You're talking about the stand-up proscenium show. It's like that's what, for years, you were expected to do, was just absorb what I'm putting at you. It's like, and it's an invitation to play. And that's what escape rooms are. And I think that's why there's been such a incredible success across the country in many, many cities of escape rooms. It's just like, it's the equivalent of a game night, which is play, but it's like, no, seriously, come play in a really cool environment. So I think that's key, and it has come up multiple times in multiple answers now.
Well, I was just going to touch on talking about sustainability because of people wanting to play. Like Justin was touching on, of like swiping left or swiping right, like, and not removing the screen. I think for our generation is everything is on the telephone or on TV, and we don't have as much as an opportunity to be social or other than just typing messages to people or text messaging. We don't get on the phone and actually talk to people really anymore. Even that's almost gone. Never mind sitting one-on-one and having an emotional response with each other. So touching on playing, people just want to connect. We want to connect, especially now in this generation where everything is occupying our mind and our time, where we can't connect in a real way. Everything, it's almost, I don't trust everything I see on the internet or how, you know what I mean? The trust is almost going away. And ultimately, I think as human beings, we want a real emotional response. We want to connect. We want to trust what's in front of us. And that's what I'm hoping for sustainability and playing in our environments, that people gain that.
That's the most important word to us, is play. You go out and it's wonderful that escape rooms are a thing now, because that is another way you can play. But without that, it's like, we're going to go to a bar, we're going to go to a restaurant, we're going to go sit and stare at a screen somewhere, And we want to be able to do something more than that. Kids get so much out of play, and it grows the mind, and it allows you to interact with people and build those connections. And then as we move into adults, we end up sitting at a desk job or something, and you don't get that opportunity. And so for us, it's like we've done, with When Shadows Fall, by the end of the experience, we had 40 people all on their own sort of quote-unquote missions in their head, like literally running around a space of 15,000 square feet, because they're so into it. They're so in the story in their mind. It's not a game anymore. They're just living it. and afterwards they're just like, whoa, wait, what just happened? You sort of snap out of it and you're like, wait, I want to keep doing it. I want to live that life. I don't want to go back to my desk job and just sit there. And it's an opportunity to just have fun. And it's something that we are, when you're sitting staring at a screen, it's mindless, but it's not fun.
Also, it's just something that I get asked a lot because of the podcast, because we've talked about escape rooms, that venue. It's interesting that you talked about that, because this is adult material that we're talking about here from you guys. Yeah, don't take the kids to Burger Co, really. I get asked all the time, what can I take my kids to get them away from the screen? It's like, I work for Disney, and a lot of the people coworkers that I work with actually come to me and just like, I want something interactive, and my kids have heard about escape rooms, my kids have heard about that. So I love the fact that I'm hearing, at least, of parents wanting to separate the kids from the screen and wanting to find these types of experiences that children can partake of. And if you live in the Los Angeles area, there are escape rooms that do children's escape rooms. So look for them, find them, because I think it is a very valid comment that it's like, get them while they're young. Get them away from their phones. No one is telling us to stop. I don't know if that's So anyone more questions?
She's telling us to.
Oh, she is. Party pooper. Wait, somebody had a question, real quick.
Sorry, just a quick question. As like directors and creators of immersive theater, creating like a whole a realistic world as you can possibly. As regards of your actors that you hire, how do you make sure that the roles that they're playing when they're covering like kind of like dark and sensitive topics doesn't really affect them? What do you look for in like an actor basically is what I'm making sure. Make sure that it's not gonna, especially when it's coming so much alike and you're having like weekly things as the countdown and stuff like that. How do you make sure it's not gonna be like affecting them off the stage? I guess you would say. Quote, unquote.
Oh, for me.
Well, that's for all you guys. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Just
Well, for us, the Council, the actors actually create their own character. It is definitely a collaborative project in the Council. We all come together kind of like a family, and they decide, okay, what are you comfortable with? What do you want to explore? You're kind of committing to this for 2 years. What type of personality within you as an artist wants to explore, and what is that? And I think that's the beauty of our actors, is that they're all doing it because they're exploring and growing within that character, because they're picking and choosing. As for hiring an actor for a specific role that maybe they're not fully comfortable with, then that's just being said straight up like, yeah, this is what it entails. How do you feel about that? And if they're smiling, I'm like, right on. If they're not, they're like, then I'm like, it's not for you. And that's it.
Actually, yeah, and like, because you guys, there's performers in the escape room, and I know that you deal with performers that intimately deal with audience members.
Yeah, we the one that comes to mind immediately that we cast very specifically in the Halloween experience we did last year, Study of Dreams, we had, after a long path, we had a scene that was very intimate. It was actually in a shower, and we encouraged, we didn't even encourage, people on their own had the ability to step into the shower and with an actor and partake in a scene. And that meant removing clothing and all that sort of thing. And we knew that's a huge, very careful thing we had to orchestrate. And so the actress that we cast for that was a former dominatrix. We knew she could easily understand boundaries and consent and could handle situations like that with ease and with grace, and know how to work around the very nuanced roles of that. So sometimes it's just finding that right specific person who can handle it, and definitely I would never force someone into a role like that. Someone just actor A, jump in the shower. No, that's a little absurd. So it depends on the complexity of the role. We've also seen after 2 hours of being a character, right? You get really, really into it, especially when stakes are heightened in an experience, and there's like a cool down period that's needed afterwards. You need a period it's almost like transition out of that character. You can't just like shove people out the door and expect them to go back to the real world.
And for us, with more of a traditional theme park background, it's drilled into our heads regarding safety and all that stuff. So that's what we were really kind of looking for from our actors. there was a little bit of a learning curve on getting them to understand what the boundaries were that we were sort of trying to set down. But I mean, I think a lot of what like attractions like what Justin's done and stuff, I mean, that kind of, you guys really kind of, at least in this region, really kind of set the foundation on how things can be done with actors. And so it was kind of being able to pull things that we saw from other experiences and match that with some of the stuff that we had in our background to get what we really wanted, so that the guest was getting a good experience and the actors felt nice and comfortable as well.
And just, I think it's just really important to have like on break, they're called breakdowns. So like really looking at a character and be like, what's the emotional run of this character? You know, what the physical entail? Are you gonna have to be in lingerie or shirtless? So you can really kind of just spell it out at the beginning, and then you can find those people who like submit or up for those kind of challenges. And then I think as a director, you always have to be open to pull things back. You know, you always have to be like, wouldn't it be crazy? And then you're like, great, I found this awesome girl, but maybe, you know, she can't be topless, you know? And so like, and that's crazy if I mean said that, but yes.
Cool. So I think we're being told that that is it. So thank you all for coming to this panel and being part of this conversation. So go out and play, all of you.